journalist tweet. Craig dig, wrong link still. The old is already a big. Don't ever send me a link that we can't sample. V-looper against finals. This is how it's sent. Journalist tweet. Craig dig, wrong link still. This sample is
Borat's subsequent movie film is directed by Jason Woliner and is the reprisal of Sacha Baron Cohen's massively impactful and extremely popular Borat character 16 years after the original Borat film. So the film opens 14 years after the original film, and Borat has been placed in an internment camp in Kazakhstan because he has brought great shame upon the nation after the release of the first film. And he is brought out of that work camp in order to go back to the United States by the leader of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, and the reason for that is that ever since Donald Trump's election, he's been making friends and sort of surrounding himself with authoritarian dictators from around the world, but hasn't extended that same courtesy to Nazarbayev. So the leader of Kazakhstan sends Borat back to the United States in order to offer a present to the President of the United States. Borat was such a surprise hit when it came out, and it became an absolute cultural phenomenon. And in that respect, I don't think the film could really live up to its predecessor in any way. And I say that I enjoy the film. I think Sacha Baron Cohen is very funny, and the film in itself is very funny, and I on the most part enjoyed it, but I also think in a way as a sequel to Borat, it's kind of a failure. There's a quite famous French piece of literature called Lettres persanes. It was written by a very famous French philosopher called Montesquieu. A man from Persia goes to France and sort of observes French society and is writing letters back to his native home describing what he's seeing. And it starts off by him being very naive and unaware of sort of the social norms of French society. But as you read deeper and deeper, you understand that it is a sort of scathing observation and satire of French society of that time. And for me, the original Borat is very much that. It starts off as the joke being on Borat and the joke being on Kazakhstan, and as the film progresses, you understand that the film is a satire of American society. And Borat 2 doesn't really do that as much anymore, and there are reasons for that. I don't think it can in the way that it did back in 2006. One of the reasons for this is that Borat is an icon. He's a cultural icon at this point. He is extraordinarily recognizable as a character, and so Sacha Baron Cohen can't just go out dressed with the mustache and the suit and the hair and not be recognized anymore. And they address this in the film in a way that's really interesting, but that means that he can't really be Borat anymore. And so his daughter in the film, played by Maria Bakalova, ends up doing most of that heavy lifting, and she's really good. She's actually probably the standout in the film. I think she's fantastic. The great thing about Borat as a character is that he's absurd and extreme and racist and ridiculous, and he sort of is able to expose both people's inner sort of grossness, people's inner most horrific thoughts, their racism, their misogyny, but at the same time they also pad it with this veneer of politeness. They're extremely tolerant of Borat in many respects, and a lot of that is because there's a camera, because they're in public, people act in a certain way even though their words are actually more horrific than the sort of veneer that they put around it. And in 2005, 2006, I think that veneer of, social norms and politeness still existed, and there was still a place for somebody to, much in the same way that Montesquieu does it, take an outsider's perspective, looks in, and kind of exposes the absurdity, the vileness, just things that are wrong that we take for granted because we live them every day. But in 2020, that whole veneer of politeness, of social norms have completely disappeared. Obviously, that's a big part of like the Trump, post-Brexit world. And people are much more out in the open with their horrific ideas. And I don't think we look at our own societies anymore and think, oh, that's normal. No, reality has become a satire of itself in the way that actual satirical programs can't really account for anymore. And to a certain extent, some of that is true about Borat as well. It's kind of like in 2020, do we really need Borat anymore? Do we really need that outside observer to look at the nastiness and the dirtiness of the world in which we live? And I don't really think so. And that's why, for me, the best scene in the film is the debutante's ball, because that's really what I expect and what I think Borat is great at. So partway through the film, Borat decides to offer up his daughter to Mike Pence as a present. And of course, the idea being, oh, look at this backwards country where women are property. His daughter is held in a cage at the beginning of the film, and now he's offering up like she's a piece of meat. But then you arrive to the US, to a civilized, I would suppose, not shithole country, and all of a sudden you have this exact same thing where basically fathers are giving away their daughters as prizes in a way that's, prim and proper and part of, culture and part of tradition, but is just as gross and ass backwards. So to me, that really is the best scene in the film, in my opinion, and unfortunately there's just not enough of that. The first Borat came out before Twitter, before really social media. Sacha Baron Cohen could pull his stunts and then make a movie about it, and we would actually experience them for the first time in the theater. But now, a lot of the stunts that he pulled were then posted on social media. So when he breaks into CPAC dressed as Donald Trump, when he goes to that Trump rally and starts singing that country song, how they're going to chop up Obama like the Saudis do. People in the crowd start chanting along with him. All that was already posted to social media, so those kind of ridiculous, absurd stunts don't work as well within the context of the movie anymore, because, as always, social media ruins everything. But as a fictional comedy, I would say it's actually, really funny. It's a great watch. It's probably better structured than the original Borat, which I feel was looser. It has more of an arc. And, it's a great time. Like I said, I think Maria Bakalova really is the standout. It can't have the same cultural impact 14 years on. And unfortunately, I think in many ways the actual making of the film, the way they had to hide and the way they had to make the film amidst the pandemic, is probably almost more interesting than the film itself. I don't think it will stay culturally relevant the way that the original Borat did. And that's unfortunate, but I am very curious to see what Sacha Baron Cohen can do next. I don't think he could do another Bruno film, at least not in the way he did it back in 2009. But it is nice to see him in a film that's actually funny, because over the last few years we've kind of become accustomed to him playing in, movies like The Dictator or Brothers Grimsby, which honestly are kind of shit. So as always, thanks very much for watching the video. Please be sure to hit the like button if you liked the review. Subscribe if you're new, and until next time, see ya.